everyone is aware that Democrats are motivated, and these rallies will show it. But they have a feeling that their own base is motivated too. This impeachment is going to rile up a lot of Republican resentment, and so it's going to work both ways.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I think is going to be a big thing politically, and I think that's something that they're really going to be they're really going to try and hold them over. And I do remember they tried to do it in 2018 to without really any evidence, but they ended up doing it, and it was something that did come to fruition in in 2019. Like they were campaigning. Like if we lose the Senate, Trump could be not president anymore. And I mean, it certainly would be possible if the Democrats have managed to flip the Senate. And that's going to be, I think, something that will not the Republicans. It'll be probably the new caravan of 2020. It's I do kind of waffle from thinking that thing, like if they're going to pound it over the heads of everyday Americans, kind of thinking that their president will be under fire, like stand with the president, that kind of thing, or will it just kind of slip out of the consciousness as soon as the Senate acquittal happens, and it's not really going to be a big thing come 2020. Like that's something that I kind of lean towards more 2020. No one's going to think about it or care about it. Then it's going to be the biggest issue, and every single second of the day is going to be spent thinking about it, talking about it, writing about it in the media, and all that stuff. But I just don't know. It seems like it could be a very good issue for the Republicans to pick up on. It could be pretty devastating if they do and hammer it correctly, which I mean they certainly could.
Yeah, yeah. But you're hinting at the fact, which is very true, that the news cycles are so crazy within this
Yeah.
president that by the time the election happens, we'll be talking about something completely different. There'll be some new scandal, or some new damaging information about whoever the Democratic nominee is, or who knows. um, So, I mean, Rachel Maddow just said late last week that it looks like everything with this impeachment is set in stone. But she said, you never know. Some new information could come out in the next few days that could change things. She didn't say it was likely, but but she
Yeah, I
was
mean,
saying you never know.
it can be very, very crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so enough about impeachment. I do want to switch gears here to a very, very serious and important issue. Disturbing reports coming out as climate action advocates who had spent 2 weeks demanding strong commitments from the COP25 climate summit emerged from the conference Sunday, stunned and angry over its conclusion, which was deemed a lost opportunity by the UN Secretary General. Because of the refusal from some of the world's wealthiest countries to commit to more ambitious targets to reduce their climate warning carbon emissions, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the international community lost an important opportunity to show increased ambition on mitigation, adaptation, and finance to tackle the climate crisis. As Common Dreams reported Saturday, the summit was intended to wrap up Friday, but negotiations lasted 2 extra days as delegations debated provisions for carbon markets. The final deal acknowledged that there was a significant gap between the countries' pledges to reduce their carbon emissions to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and the government's abilities to actually achieve them in the reduction. So, again, this seems to be another thing where it's just like there's nothing to go. Like, there's no strong option here. Like, there doesn't seem to be any guiding light. There's nothing, not anything with Trump. Obviously, and with the election in the UK, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of good things happening there either. And even if people like the conservatives maybe say don't deny outright the existence of climate change, they'll still give every break possible to fossil fuel companies. So, I mean, what's really the big difference there? It's very, very hard to feel optimistic about this issue, especially when we hear people, not just activists, but the UN Secretary General coming out and saying they really lost an opportunity here, guys. Like you're not in good hands. Like this is a real problem. What encouraging things have you? And this may be a hard question. I apologize, but like, what encouraging things have you seen about the issue of climate change as of recent?
Well, one of the promising things, there's like you said, there's nothing in the political arena that is promising.
True.
Regarding climate change. But from an economic perspective, there's lots of good things. Solar and other alternative forms of renewable energy are the price of those is going down every year, and now it's cheaper energy than the fossil fuel industry. It's getting harder and harder to pull gas and oil out of the ground. It's becoming more expensive, and so the natural economics of things is what really motivates people is money, right? And so I think as long as we can kind of cap all these incentives to fund the gas and oil industry, which unfortunately is a lot of it's political, but I think just economies will prevail here, and maybe we'll make a dent in the climate problem. I just don't know if we're going to be able to do it fast enough. It seems like we're going to have to swing over to a different way of giving the world energy faster than we're doing it now, if we're going to prevent this snowballing effect of rising temperatures in the climate.
Do you feel like there has been kind of enough attention given in the media and at least in popular culture to this issue of climate change? Because I know we saw Greta Thunberg recently, the young climate activist, win the Time Person of the Year award, which is pretty good to see. But I mean, even the things she did, I mean, she certainly made a lot of more people aware. But I mean, when it comes down to brass tacks here, like that's. And I'm not really blaming her for it. She's a kid. She can't really like single-handedly like change the world's policy. But it's hard to see that there's anything else really going on about that, as opposed to a bunch of people just kind of knowing about the issue of climate change in the first place. Like a lot of people who went to that climate march that I know, like they were like, yeah, it's great, but again, there's still a lot of skepticism about that, and I just don't know if a lot of people fully extend or really even believe that there is such a big problem, especially here in the U.S. among people my age that I've talked to, who understand that there is a big problem. I don't think that people really fully get the gravity of the situation that is at play here.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you hear about this 2 degrees Celsius change in temperatures. And people look at that and they say, well, that's not that much. Okay, so the summers are a little hotter, winters are a little warmer, but it's still cold in the winter and it's still hot in the summer. And,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, there's been more storms, but maybe that's just from luck. It's not a dramatic enough thing, even though there's been plenty of drama. I mean, look at all the fires and all the tornadoes and hurricanes.
Yeah, like look what's happened in California just recently.
Yeah. So I don't know. People are just very stubborn, and I just don't. I don't get it. If you could do some things that would change things for the better, even if you don't completely believe it, why not just try it in the hopes that it'll work, and maybe that you're wrong? I mean, what's the real damage if you just try these things? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there really just has to be a big time mobilization. I think, and you know what I'm going to say, I'm just trying to bring it back to make a little bit of a political point here, but it's just like the only mobilization on that is coming from not the Democratic Party per se, but the left and people like Ilhan Omar, AOC, Bernie, who are proposing the Green New Deal and all that. I just think that's like the only American policy in the American political sphere that even comes just close to doing enough here. It's just like a lot of other people, they're just not, like, they know it's a big problem, they're just not really like, they're not fully understanding the gravity, I think, of the situation. So, yeah, I guess just not enough people will have really become climate refugees yet. It's some crazy number of climate refugees that are expected to pop up as things get worse and worse as we continue to the apocalypse here. But countries were, in this conference, they were urged to, in the final text, to honor their emissions reduction commitments, but the high-polluting countries, including China and India and the U.S., argued they saw no need to set more ambitious reduction plans for themselves. In the final hours of negotiation, Papua New Guinea's climate envoy, Kevin Conrad, told Euronews 90% of the participants have not been involved in this process. People just, even the biggest countries leading these climate envoys have just not been participating. Developing countries especially took issue with language that the U.S. successfully stonewalled, which could have addressed how the U.S. should be held liable to island nations for the damage the climate crisis has already caused to them, thanks in part to the activities of the world's biggest carbon emitter historically. The Tuvalu delegation reportedly said Sunday that the United States' refusal to compensate other countries for loss and damage could be considered a crime against humanity. If you don't know what Tuvalu is, it is I think the smallest island in the world, or it's the least visited place in the world. It's just kind of like a chain of islands. I actually don't know where it is for sure, but it's very, very small. And it's going to be, I think, one of the first countries to disappear against climate change. So, as you can imagine, they're pretty pissed at the U.S., who's just dumping out greenhouse gas, contributing to the rising the sea levels here. I think, I just don't know how we're going to be able to get this into a bigger percentage or bigger chunk of Americans' minds to fully understand the gravity of the situation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to elect the right politicians who will pursue this kind of policy and have them lead. I mean, I don't really see another way around it. I mean, like I was saying originally, there are certain things about the economics of energy that will help, but I don't think that's going to go fast enough. I think we have to do more dramatic things. We have to do things like, more strict automobile emissions and things like that. I mean, Trump's rolling all that stuff backwards. The Obama administration did some pretty aggressive things, and that's good. But when you elect people that are climate deniers, they're going to roll things back, and if they have, the oil and gas industry is funding their reelection, then that's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that I think so many people have to be held to such a higher standard on, and that's something that I think we got to work towards in the upcoming year for sure. All right, I do want to turn to a little bit more small scale. Let's talk 2020. An interesting article that I saw about why white Iowans want a nominee who can appeal to non-white voters. It's from Sydney Ember. They share awkward glances at events where nearly everyone looks at them. They take comfort in reminding one another that they propelled Barack Obama to the White House. They swear in their values and priorities that they priorities are representative of more than a Corn Belt farm state. With less than 2 months until the Iowa caucuses begin with the presidential nominating process, the sense of duty among white Iowans has never been greater or more complex. Already confronting questions about whether their overwhelmingly white state should remain in its preeminent position in the primary process, many Iowa Democrats are consumed by a desire to select a coalition-building Democrat who can beat President Trump. So they are fixated more than ever on backing a candidate they believe can win in more diverse states than their own. I think responsible is a good word, said Lisa Yoder, a retired teacher from Kelowna who came to an event in Washington recently to see Pete Buttigieg speak. We want someone who the nation will get behind and support. Everyone, just not